It appears that players in Nigeria's tourism industry will once again have a reason to smile following the substantial reopening directive given by President Muhammadu Buhari. Hotels have been told to open shop again, and everyone waits with bated breath for June the 21st, when it is expected that the airports will reopen for domestic flights. What should patrons and operators alike expect as COVID-19 continues to redirect Nigeria towards the path of what is being generally described as the new normal? Joining us now to look at the problems and prospects of this critical sector of the economy, is Omotayo Omotosho, MFR, a former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation. Mrs. Omotosho is also the executive producer of the program Towards a Greater Nigeria. Welcome to the program. Good morning, Mrs. Omotosho.
Good morning, Mr. Omotosho.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ruben. Morning, Sojo.
Morning. It's good to have you here. Well, let's start with COVID-19 and the impact on the tourism sector. The tourism sector is probably one of the most impacted sectors as a result of COVID-19, not just in Nigeria, but globally. Now, government has taken some steps, one of which we have seen in terms of the attempt by the Minister of Information to set up a committee to look at ways in which the creative sector could be helped. But that committee is restricted to the creative sector. Do you think that it should have been a committee to also cover travel and tourism in terms of the recovery process?
Thank you very much, Ruben. Thank you. I do understand the fact where we place emphasis on creative sector, but I need to quickly say here that the creative sector is just one arm of tourism worldwide, globally. Tourism is mega. Tourism is life. When we realize that tourism goes beyond creative sector, then we'll be able to answer the question you just asked me. So let me quickly say that the earlier we realize that tourism is life, the better. Tourism touches all sectors of our economy. Tourism has a lot to do with education. We have educational tourism. It has a lot to do with security and immigrations, and so the Internal Affairs Ministry is involved in tourism. It has a lot to do with transportation and travels. The Transportation Ministry is involved. We have that of environment. The Environment Ministry is involved in tourism. We have that of finance. We have that of ecotourism. What I'm trying to say is, if I break it down, we wouldn't leave the studio today, but needful for me to say that tourism cuts across all the sectors of our economy. And when we realize that, we will now know that it's not enough to set up a committee to look at the creative subsector of the tourism industry. That's what it is called. It's not a sector. Creative subsector of the tourism industry. It's good that they're looking at it, but we're saying that, and it's a good question you asked me, it's as if you're reading my mind. We're saying that let's go beyond the creative sector. There are a lot of other subsectors within this big industry we call tourism globally. We cannot define tourism separately or differently in Nigeria. Tourism has how would I call it now, an international definition, which another person will call a global definition. And I would define it simply. Tourism is one attraction that draws people to where you are. Tourism is not just dances and culture and festivals. Tourism goes beyond that. Whatever attraction, whatever attracts you, pulls you to a particular event or a particular location or a particular identity, it's all about tourism. And so when we look at that, then we know that creative subsector is just one aspect of tourism. It's good that the minister has set up a committee to look into this. But we're saying that if Nigeria doesn't want to be left behind, we should not be setting up a committee for the creative subsector alone. We should be setting up a committee for the development and the growth of the entire tourism industry. It is global. We cannot exist in isolation. When we're looking at creative industry or creative subsector alone, other nations are running. COVID or no COVID, Other nations have invested majorly into this sector. I've been to Kenya, I've been to South Africa, I've been to Ghana. I'm not even talking of nations outside Africa, mega stations outside Africa. But let's bring it to perspective. Let's look at within our own region. In Africa, they've gone far. So we cannot be looking at creative subsector of the economy alone. It should be more global. And I wish to advise our Honorable Minister to look into this. If we're serious in promoting the sector, wanting to make it a major revenue earner for government, and we don't have a choice. Oil and gas, maybe gas is not dwindling, but oil is dwindling. We know the price of oil now compared to a few years ago when it was a major revenue earner. And so for us to be able to get the funds we need to galvanize all the sectors of the economy, we cannot ignore tourism.
We certainly can't, Ma, because as you mentioned, Ghana and Kenya there, Ghana's tourism industry contributes 5.5% to their GDP and Kenya 10%, while Nigeria is hovering around 1%. But you were given the moniker Madam Tourism, and you really put a face and a voice to that tourism industry. I'm going to reel off a few of the sites that became really prominent through you: the Black Heritage Festival, Argungu Fishing Festival, the Durbas of the Core North, Yankari Game Reserve, so many others. Argungu I've mentioned, Agbokum Waterfalls, Obudu Tourist Ranch, Tinapa Resort, so many things. Can you take us through that process and really underscore why, in a time like this, with oil prices plunging, it's so volatile, we really do need to diversify the economy and exploit every avenue that we have?
Thank you very much, Tudu. It's delightful to hear you reel all the things we did while I was the Director General of Tourism. And that's way back, year 2000, 20 years ago. And I must quickly say that, yes, what we did at that time is the fact that we called ourselves together as a team. If I wanted to operate alone as a chief tourism regulator for Nigeria, I wouldn't have succeeded. I was wise enough to realize that the private sector, they play the vital role in this industry. So I worked so closely with them. I made sure that I worked closely with my supervisory minister as well, because if you don't have the blessing of your minister, you don't let your minister know how committed you are to the sector. You are working in a different hemisphere, far away from that of your minister. You cannot succeed. Tourism is life, and it's not a one-man show. So I had the buy-in of my minister. The things that I needed my minister approval for, I never hesitated in talking with her before even presenting the memo. And she gave me all the blessing. I'm talking of Minister Boma Bromilo Jack. Even when people thought two women would not be able to work together, we worked so closely together. I remember telling her that I'll be fooling myself to think DG is at par with minister. No, DG is being supervised by the minister. And so what did we do? I told her, for us to make a success of this economy, we must set up a public-private sector partnership for tourism development, because we couldn't do it alone as government officials. The tourism sites and attractions, they don't exist in Abuja. They exist in all the 36 states of Nigeria. And we didn't want the governors to be coming to Abuja just to rely so much on the subvention when they could generate funds within their own state. So I first started by touring the 36 states of the Federation with my management team. But I knew I couldn't be doing that and leave the job unattended to in Abuja. So we spaced it. We did what we call a tourism program for development. So from January till December, we knew the tourist attractions we wanted to work with, the tourist attractions we wanted to develop, the ones we need to rehabilitate, the ones we needed to recreate. And so I said, for me to succeed, I need the governors that were ready for tourism. But I didn't just, how would I put it now, handpick them. I visited every governor, and within that time frame, 12 calendar months. Because we couldn't say within 1 month, all we would do is just visiting governors. No, we got to be proactive. And so, having spaced that, we went to the state governors, and believe you me, we got about 10 eventually out of 36 that were ready for tourism. Because in every state of Nigeria, we are blessed with lots of tourism potentials: ecotourism, adventure tourism, sport tourism, nature tourism. This one I call education tourism, religious tourism, even the slave route tourism, conference tourism, name it. We have about 10, 12, if not more, facets of tourism. So I was able to tell the executive governors, these are the potentials we have, and we've done our research. These are the ones we found in your state. How can we work together? They were ready. But when I said 10 out of 36, 10 out of 36 were ready to drive the tourism sector of their state. They didn't leave it for the commissioners alone to do, because I told them you cannot leave it for the commissioners. And so, having gotten their buy-in, we now moved to the 6 geopolitical zones of the Federation. Because I didn't want Madam Tourism to be accused of promoting tourism only from Southwest, when I know I'm representing Nigeria as a nation, not a region. So we selected the 6 geopolitical zones, and we had beautiful tourism attractions in the 6 geopolitical zones. So I saw one governor that was ready to drive tourism and didn't allow me to belabor the issue when I got to his state, promoting tourism every second of the day for the 8 years that he was there. I'm talking of the gentleman we call Mr. Tourism in Nigeria. That's Donald Duke in Cross River State. So it was easy for Donald and his management team, his executives, and mine to work together. And that's why up till today, the good works of Donald Duke in Cross River State, you could still see it, but unfortunately, not at the level that I expected to be seen some 20 years after. If everything we did at that time, from looking at Obudu Tourist Ranch, the waterfall, they actually developed what we call the tourism circuit, so that when visitors came out of this country, they could just say they were fine being in Cross River State alone.
Well,
because,
Madam, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We need to take a short commercial break. When we return, the conversation will continue. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Still with us is Omotayo Omotosho, MFR, a former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation. Yes, Madam, if you could just complete your thoughts before we ask you another question.
Thank you very much, Ruben. So in Cross River State alone, at that time we had the Obudu Tourist Ranch with the largest cable car, turf to turf. That's from the end, from the beginning to the end of the stretch. And of course, we have the Tinapa. We got the famous Calabar Carnival. Up till today, it's still being hosted. I don't know what has become of Tinapa since Donald Duke left. We left Cross River State to go to Southwest. And in Southwest, we had Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who also believed so much in tourism, and said, my sister, whatever you want, this is going to generate funds for me. So how do we do it? And so together we started the Black Heritage Festival. The arrowhead of tourism representing the governor at that time was Hakeem Gbajabiamila. And governor himself drove this tourism wheel. We left Black Heritage Festival, of course, we started doing it every year. It's not a one-off, where we had over 200 American mayors visit Nigeria and came to Lagos and were thrilled by what they saw. It wasn't a one affair kind of a thing. They were here for about a week. It was a one-week celebration, which was hosted every year during the time of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I knew Fashola took over, but I never knew what happened when Ambode got there. We left that of Cross River, that of Lagos State. We went to Osun to see how we could partner with the Osun State government in repositioning the Osun Oshogbo, we call it Osun Oshogbo Festival. By God's grace, it became a #1 World Heritage Site. World Heritage Site from Nigeria. It's been named a World Heritage Site. Until today, we host Osun Oshogbo Festival. We left there, we went to Ekiti, because we knew the governor then was also ready for tourism. And Ikogosi Spring became a darling of so many people. We were able to get the Gosi water till today is generating revenue for the state. We left Southwest, we went to Bauchi, because as I said, I didn't want to be accused of Madam just promoting tourism from where she comes from. And in Bauchi, Governor Muazu was more than enough to welcome us. He told me, Tayo, what do you want me to do? We're ready because it's going to generate revenue for us. And by God's grace, we're able to upgrade Yankari Game Reserve, it was called then, to a national park. We worked closely with the DG, my colleague, in charge of the national museums. And so national museums and then national park. We have the two different agencies. National Museum under Culture and Tourism, National Park under a different ministry. But we worked together. We left Bauchi state government. We went to the famous Durbers of the North, Sokoto State, Borno State, and Kaduna, Kano. And at that time, Durbar Festival was a beauty to behold. Believe you me, a lot of visitors came to Nigeria at that time because we worked also closely with the Federal Office of Statistics. I didn't just want to be talking of tourism without my facts and figures. So I had to cut, as a good friend, the chief executive of the Federal Office of Statistics at that time, another government agency, letting him know I cannot survive without working closely with you. So all the people I needed to place concerted effort on, and I needed to draw together for us to promote the sector, we worked with. And I did start by saying public-private sector partnership. It was during my time we convinced some state governors to help us talk to the president at that time that we needed to set up the Presidential Council on Tourism. Governor Donald Duke again was at the forefront of that. Came to see my minister, myself, himself, my minister, put heads together, and he went back to Cross River. So my minister and I went to the villa to see the president and told him, for us to survive as a tourism industry, for us to generate the funds you desire, these are the things we needed to do. I remember the president asking me and Minister Bromilo Jack, okay, Presidential Council on Tourism, who presides? I'm so busy. Don't say that you want me to be the chairman of the sector. We said, sir, well, that's what it is. Because we'll have the Minister in charge of Internal Affairs as a member. We have that of Foreign Affairs as a member. We have that of Education. We have that of Commerce and Industry. We have Commerce Tourism. We have that of Transportation, Aviation, name it. It's not just Ministry of Information, Culture and Tourism or National Orientation. We touch lives. So he saw the genuineness in our conversation. And he said, okay, but how many times do you need me? If you want me to be the president, if you want me to be the chairman of this committee. My minister said, even once in a quarter. And if you think once in a quarter is too much, sir, once in 6 months. He said, I must promote this sector. Other countries have made a lot of success out of it. They're making a kill in terms of revenue. I would do it every quarter. We didn't believe our ears. But because he saw the genuineness of purpose, and the two of us bombarded him, having done our homework, we went to see the chief of staff, we went to see the vice president, we spoke with some governors, so they've wet the floor before myself and my minister go to the president. And so he became the chairman of the committee. Believe you me, Ruben and Tudu, the best time ever in this nation for tourism was at that time, because every sector that needed to be represented will be at the meeting. And the president will say, I don't want to have the meeting at the villa. I won't know what is going on. I want to go to the grassroots. I want to go to a specific tourist site. Madam Tourism, you give me the calendar of the tourism projects you want to develop. Let me see the ones that we should be looking at, so that we will go to a particular location. I will see with my korokoro eyes. And so it wasn't the government, show alone. We brought private sector. Mr. Goody Ibru was in charge of hotels at that time and doing so well with Sheraton Hotels. He was a member. And the same with Muzali Dantata from the north. We had about 6 core private sector operators as member of this committee. Well, and Ruben, let me quickly end by saying that everything we needed to do to promote tourism were decided at that Presidential Council on Tourism meeting by the president saying, okay, you need immigration. Immigration, work with them and feed me back in 2 weeks. Oh, you need national parks. Work with them, feed me back in 3 weeks. You need this, work with chief of staff, feed me back. Believe you me, a lot of things we're able to do. So governors were not constrained with challenges and coming to Abuja to see one minister or the other. All the governors that were ready for tourism were part of us, and we recorded a huge success.
Well, Madam, thank you for that very engaging account of the situation in the country at the time you were in charge of tourism development. But the point made by Tundu about what we now see is that over the years, in the last 20 years, there's not been sustainable development. There's been what you can interpret as a neglect of the sector. What do you think is responsible for this? Is it, I mean, from your account, it's like individuals play a major role. And, you know, do we have the relevant institutions? And then secondly, what should we do? What is the problem? Do states need to devote more funds to the travel and tourism sector? Is it an issue of political will? What kind of suggestions would you like to give going forward and revitalizing the tourism industry in Nigeria?
Thank you, Ruben. I will first say that the last 20 years, yes, we should have gotten much, much higher than the level where we are. But look at year 20,000, which means year 2000, 2000, till 2005. That was the time Nigeria was blessed with the prestigious beauty pageant Miss World emerging from Nigeria. The very first time ever an African would win Miss World. It was like answered prayer, because we now used her as the model, as the icon, as the trademark to promote tourism for Nigeria. So all the things we needed to do domestically and internationally, we had Miss World at the forefront. And so it didn't surprise me when the Federal Office of Statistics gave me the record that the highest tourist traffic in Nigeria ever recorded was between 2000 and 2005. So your question will be, what happened after 2005 till today? Simply, there's no continuity. Simply, there's no continuity. The beautiful ideas and the tourist attractions and the projects that we were marketing at the time should have been promoted further, should have been developed further. See Tinapa. It's a big shame. Governor Duke did so well with Tinapa. The president at that time did so well with Tinapa. We were there at the commissioning of Tinapa. We had a lot of tourists from all over the world converge in Nigeria, Calabar, for the commissioning of Tinapa, which would have been a resort for everybody all over the world to come and settle and have a feel. See what it is today? No continuity. And so I wouldn't say that it's just the paucity of funds. At that time, we didn't have funds, you know.
Madam, sorry to interrupt you here, but what is the way forward? What would you like to see in the future?
What I'd like to see in the future is the re-emergence of the Presidential Council on Tourism. That is the bedrock. That is the foundation that we thrived on and we built on when we were there. That is a foundation that will not make a governor to say, I don't have the control of immigration. I've been able to get some visitors that want to come to Nigeria, but they need visas. We need to give them visas on arrival or before they leave, and immigration is federal. Or another governor says, oh, infrastructure. There are some federal roads that lead to a specific tourist site. They are not within my own purview. I need the minister in charge of works to work with us. All these ministers are members of the Presidential Council on Tourism. So I quickly make bold to say that we appeal, those of us that are so passionate about this sector, our tour operators, tourism professionals, we appeal to the government of the day, the president himself, President Buhari, to revisit the Presidential Council on Tourism. There was a time last year, the minister told me and a few other colleagues that it's been approved because we've been in dialogue with minister.
On that note, ma'am.
But we want to see more. We want not just being approved. We want to see action.
Thank you very much.
Action.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.